Faith Forged Fathers is a podcast focused on navigating fatherhood and growing what God has called us to be as fathers. My name is Matthew Green. I'm a father of 2 young sons, and the mission of this podcast is to provide a wide array of experiences, perspectives through interviewing guests from all stages of fatherhood. My hope is that we'll all learn together, gain encouragement and wisdom along the way. Thanks for listening. Welcome to this episode of Faith Forged Fathers. Today, I'm really excited to have on Tony Moreno. I was introduced to Tony just recently, actually, by a mutual friend of ours, Josiah Smeltzer. I've been able to kind of follow Tony the last couple of weeks as he's the co-host of the Daily Real Estate Investor. And that's actually, as much as I kind of know about Tony at this point. So I'm really excited to get to know him tonight, hear him share his story. And so welcome, Tony. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to be here. Again, I told you we were talking prior to starting the interview, and this is a ministry that honestly it takes a lot of work to do a podcast, and then on top of that, it's a religious fatherhood podcast. I think that's awesome, man. I love what you're doing.
No, I appreciate it, man. And so, like I said, just trying to get to know you as well, and I want the listeners to kind of know a little bit more about who you are. So I like to always ask people kind of like, what was your path of faith, and then also kind of your path of fatherhood.
Yeah, sure. So I was born and raised in Dominican Republic, and Dominican Republic is actually a country that the majority of the whole country is very religious. Is for the most part Christian, predominantly Catholic. And over there, I mean, when you go in your neighborhood, the majority of the people are there are Christian. So it's a
Right.
very Christian based country. So I was raised in a home, a mom, dad, and I have 2 other siblings, me being the youngest one of 3. And my parents were always involved in church. Like, I do not remember a time in my childhood where I was not involved in church. From the moment I have memory, I've always been active doing something with my
That's
parents in
awesome.
church. My mom used to sing in the choir. My dad used to be an altar server. My dad used to be all kinds of things over at church. And but yeah, I mean, fast forward, in 2009, we moved to the United States. We moved to Cleveland, Ohio. And again, we were a huge part of a church there. It was a bilingual church because we speak Spanish. My first language is Spanish, and yeah, just very active over there. Fast forward, we moved to Alabama. I'm not sure how we ended up in Alabama, but we ended up here. And really, I like to say it this way: I knew about Jesus, I knew about God, but the moment that I met Jesus was when I was in college.
Oh wow.
And the reason why I say that, so college life could be fun, rough, whatever you want to call
Mm-hmm.
it, but there's a lot of distractions and a lot of things that can pull you away
Sure.
from Jesus himself. And I remember one day, me and my friends, we were at a party, um, about an hour away at a different college, and I remember I was driving that day. We had a couple of drinks and everything, but I wasn't drunk or anything, but I was, I had a couple of drinks in my head. And I remember we made it to our hometown and I was dropping everybody off that was with us. And when I was alone, I dropped off the last person. I was driving on the highway, and I remember it was about 5 a.m. in the morning. We were
Oh
just
wow.
getting back. Yeah, we were just getting back from that party. And I remember as I was driving, I was starting to doze off. Um, and I could, I mean, after I woke up, after I tell you what happens in a second, I was already on the curb, already ready to fall off a ditch.
Holy smokes.
And right before I fell off that ditch, I saw. Have you seen when somebody takes a picture of you and you see the flash,
Yeah.
um, in your eyes, and
Yeah.
sometimes you see.
Again, trying to get your eyes to
Yeah,
regulate.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And you see the image that was, like when you blink a lot, you can kind of see the image of what your eyes saw last. When that happened, I saw somebody took a picture of me with a flash, and as I was blinking, I saw Jesus far away. Like I saw
Wow.
an image of Jesus. And I remember I wanted to continue blinking because I didn't want him to fade away, and he was fading away. And I was like, anyways, when that happened, I remember me reacting. All right, I was like, all right, Jesus, I guess you don't want me to go to sleep. Let me stay up. I kind of buckled up. I got close to
Oh,
the
so this
wheel.
is like
So
mid driving, like you're on the verge of going off the
yes,
road.
yes, literally, I'm like going off the road. Exactly,
Oh,
I'm going
man,
off the
I thought
road,
you meant like you
and
were
that
sitting on the edge
happens.
of the road, like after like having something had happened. But man,
No, no, yeah. Luckily, nothing happened. Nothing. Nobody got hurt. I didn't get hurt or anything in the car. I woke up, right at the moment, right before I fell off the ditch. And I remember when that happened. Obviously, I did a lot of thinking, especially the day after. A lot of thinking as to like why, how, why did that happen?
yeah,
And I remember telling myself, I mean, at the obviously, Jesus, God does not want me dead right now.
Hmm.
If not, you know, I would have been dead a couple hours ago. That's what I was telling
Yeah,
myself. And I was thinking to myself, like, why me? I mean, there's a lot of things that happen to people. Why specifically me? And the conclusion that I came to was that, God wasn't done with me. Whatever work, whatever thing he wants me to do here on earth, it has not been done yet.
yeah.
Um, and so ever since that day, that's the moment that I got to meet God, Jesus Christ Himself.
Wow.
Um,
So,
so yeah.
so up to that point was like, I guess your kind of relationship more just like Sundays and all right, I'll be back next week, or
E-
and then from that
Exactly.
point, was it like that relational kind of transition that happens?
Yeah. So put it like, my parents have always taken us to church when we were teenagers. When I was in college, it was option. Obviously, it's my decision to go to church.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't want to let your mom and dad down. You still go to church every Sunday. But ever since that moment, it was actually my complete 100% decision to continue doing, going to church and doing God's work from there.
Nice. I love that. I know I mentioned this kind of via text earlier, and I kind of want to jump right to it. I think one of the things that I think is neat, like in your Instagram biography, right? That like a lot of people just put Christian, right, myself included. But I love that you put instrument of God,
Hmm.
and I think that that's a really powerful language. And I'm curious, kind of like what does that look like to you, and kind of what like prompted you to kind of want to use that wording. I think that's really neat.
Yeah. So it's two reasons. Number one is I play the guitar,
Hmm.
so I'm usually I'm in the choir. I'm involved in the choir in my church. So that's the reason why I'm an instrument of God. However, that's not.
Okay.
I just use that phrase because that was like quick and very cool to put at the moment. But I remember back in I want to say it was something like 2015. I heard a song, and the song basically says something like um, Jesus doesn't have hands in this world. He just has you. And I remember when I heard that. I mean, what I get out of that song when I first heard it, it was something like, "Oh my gosh, that's true." Like, I mean, we usually don't see Jesus around here helping the poor. We usually don't see Jesus around, lending a hand. It's really us.
Yeah,
And
we're
what
the
the
hands,
hand, what do what?
like yeah, we're the hands and feet of Jesus.
Exactly. Yeah. And when I remember when I heard that, I was like, crap. Like, I mean, that is so true. And the reason why it touched me so hard is because a lot of times when people, for example, when somebody asks you, hey, can you pray for me? Or hey, can you do this for me? Or can you help me? Or for the most part, we're just like, okay, okay, I will pray for you, sure. Or yeah, yeah, yeah. Hope, or you see somebody on social media that needs help, you'll be like, oh, I hope somebody helps them out. But after hearing that song, after like just thinking about that song, it just made me think like, man, there's a reason why I heard that. That's where I had to step in and be the hands and feet of Jesus. Um, so to answer your question, an instrument of God is obviously something that is used for a purpose. In this case, a lot of us know the word instrument as something that plays music.
Sure.
But an instrument could be anything. An instrument can be a tool. An instrument could be something that somebody uses for an action. And I feel like that's when I the reason why I put that phrase on Instagram is because I am a person. I am something that God is using in this
Yeah.
world,
It
and
also
and it
makes a lot more
relates.
sense why you have a guitar next to that. I didn't
Yeah.
totally didn't even put that together. Wow.
No, but yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. After it relates to the story I just told you. After that happened, I remember I'm gonna do anything in my power until I do God's will. Whatever God
Mm,
wants me to do in this world, I'm gonna do everything I can until that time has come where He calls me.
nice. Did you share that experience with the friends that you were out with that night?
Not that night. It took
Mm.
about 2 years until I actually
Oh wow.
share that with people. Again, this was back in 2015 when it happened, something like that. But it was a moment where I just couldn't explain it. Like if people asked me, I could not explain what happened really. Um, and I didn't realize that until like 2 years later as to why I understood why God did that.
Nice. I love that. So kind of like going from that point forward, kind of like what's the path, I guess, to I guess current day fatherhood look like for you?
Yeah,
Were
sure.
you
So
were you like with your I guess now wife then? Like had you met her yet or and
no, so I met my wife. It's funny. I met my wife at church
nice.
as well, and that was maybe 2 years and maybe a year after I graduated college, and we both met. We were actually helping out with a religious retreat for married couples actually, and we were both volunteer. We were both single. We were both young at the time, and we were. It was like a play and we were being the people that actually spoke in the play because it was like it was a part of the retreat where the parents closed their eyes and we were pretending to be the kids as
Mm,
we spoke. And I remember after that was done, my wife, which was a friend at the time, we just stayed talking, just getting to know each other. And from there, we exchanged contacts, and from there it was what 2 years, 3 years later we got married. And yeah, and then 2 years later we have a kid. We just had a baby about 5 weeks ago.
wow.
And yeah, man, I just became a father recently and I'm enjoying the process.
That's so fun. Yeah, I think I think you're probably the newest dad I've had on, which I'm really excited. Like, because you're like in the meat of it, right? Like you're like first go, like it's so exciting. I'm curious to hear like what your the difference between expectations and
Hmm.
reality have been kind of 5 weeks in. Is it
Yeah.
what you expected? Like, kind of what's the like in the right in the thick of it? Kind of how are you feeling right now?
Yeah, yeah. So let me start from the moment that we went to the hospital. Um, well, first of all, we my wife was at 37 weeks when she delivered. So in our heads, we had 39, 40 weeks. That's when
Mm.
we were gonna be like, okay, it's time. Let's get ready.
I still got time to
But
pack the bag.
well, the situation with my wife, we went for a checkup. They were gonna check the baby. They were gonna do like a deeper ultrasound, to check the head and some other things. And when we went to that checkup, the doctor comes and says, "Hey, your blood pressure's high." And whenever that happens, it's a condition called preeclampsia.
Mm.
And basically, when that happens, and you're at I think it's 35 weeks or more, it's like time to go to the hospital.
Go
You're
time.
about to give labor. And I remember the doctor came and she told us, "Hey, like go to the hospital. They're gonna check your blood pressure again, and if it's still high, you're gonna stay." And me and my wife, I remember we looked at each other like, "What? Like you said, like stay, like stay, like we're gonna have a baby today?"
Yeah, you're like
And
3 weeks is a long time to stay in the hospital. Like we got 3 more weeks, right?
exactly, dude. But yeah, and then obviously we went to the hospital, and man, over there it was my wife wanted everything to be as natural as possible.
Mm.
Obviously, she was getting induced, so she did get some, medicine to help her, but she did not want an epidural or anything like that. And dude, I mean, watching her, go through that pain is tough because like
Mm.
there's not much you can do but to like help her not to think about it, help her with the breathing, hold her hand as she's going uh, uh through that pain. And yeah, it was literally we got to the hospital Monday, we gave birth on Wednesday. So
Wow.
it was about close to 40-ish hours of no sleep, or try to get sleep whenever we could. And I remember when she was given delivery, I'm not a big crier. I don't really cry.
Mm.
I've only cried really at my wedding. I cried at the wedding, and uh, when I was helping the nurses, I was holding my wife when she was about to give birth, and I remember as soon as I saw the tip of his hair show up, dude, I remember I was
Just
bawling. I couldn't even get my words out. I was just like,
that's awesome, though, man. I mean, said that's
but
passed out, so I'm glad that you were like in the moment, just like that's my kid there, not just like.
yeah, dude. It was. I was crying. I mean, it was a great. I mean, and obviously the tears that were coming out of my eyes were of happiness. Like at the moment when I was seeing that, I was like, how could God create something so perfect? Like, how
Hmm.
could a life come out of this woman? Like, there's no science. Um there's nothing absolutely in this world that could create something like that. Um, I mean, I don't know how to explain it in words. I know I'm not doing the best thing
No, I, I
explaining it
got, I
here.
got you. Man. There's something super special about looking at your child, just like, oh my god, like you're at a loss for words, right? And
Yeah,
even as they get older, like I have an older, like you're still just like, man, like you're always looking
yeah.
around, we made that, like that's so cool, like.
My wife and I, we say that to each other right now when we look at him. So my son being beautiful, we're like, wow, we made that, we did
Yeah, yeah.
that.
Yeah, my wife and I always joke, and this is super random, but there was an old meme of an otter
Mm.
holding a baby otter, holding it out, and the words that the person decided to put on it was, "I made this," and it was just them holding the. And for some reason, we're always like, "I made this," like because it's just like it's so surreal.
Oh man, and to finish answering your question too, um, expectation versus reality. I like I said, I'm the youngest of three siblings. And my sister has two kids. My brother has two as well. So I kind of had like a preview of what things
Okay.
were going to be a little bit, which was good. But however, and I'm pretty sure a lot of newly parents get this all the time. A lot of people say, get some sleep now or have fun now because when the baby comes, all of that goes away. And me and my wife, we've been the type to always, accept everything that's happening, and understand that everything that happens is a gift of God.
Hmm.
And we told ourselves we're never gonna blame the baby for for anything that happens to us, for our lack of not being able to go to the movies anymore, or not being able to go out because we have a kid now. We told ourselves never to be like that. Um, and I remember when people tell me, and they still say it nowadays, oh, I hope you get sleep, or how's sleeping going. But I tell myself, I mean, number one, I'm gonna enjoy every single point in time with my baby. I'm gonna
Yeah.
be I mean, yes, it's challenging to get up. Don't get me wrong. It's very difficult when you're sleeping. I'm a deep sleeper. Like my wife has to like shove me in order
Give
for
me
me to
the
wake up.
elbow.
No, dude, not even an elbow. She has to like shake me for me to wake up.
Like a
But
catapult out of it.
exactly. So me, in order for me to be fully awakened, I have to be vertical. Like if I'm laying down, oh, I'm staying in bed. So like as soon as my wife wakes me up, or as soon as I hear the baby, my first thought is to just get vertical. This is for your baby. So me, I get up, and then I go tend the baby for whatever the baby needs. And as difficult as it is, it's just I just have to remind myself, this is not for me. God trusted this little human to me, and I got to be the best dad in the world.
Hmm.
Um, so, so yeah, that's
I love that,
and
man.
when
Like because I think your approach is like you have such a selfless, mature approach. Like where the like like our independence is over. Like I love that. That's not your posture. I think That's super awesome.
and when people ask me, how's your sleep? How are things going? I usually say, everything's fine. The baby's waking up every now and then, but we just make that up with taking naps throughout the day, or in the afternoon.
Yeah,
And I don't know if you ever heard. Have you ever heard of Baby Wise before? It's a book.
I've heard of it. Yes,
Yeah.
one of my
So
buddies had really good success with it.
yeah. So my sister recommended us to read that. It's a book called Baby Wise, and basically it's kind of like a program to into feeding your baby. Um, and what you shoot for is to have your baby on an eating schedule. And I think, uh, when the baby's born, you feed him night times, and you break that down in like every 3 hours, you feed the baby. Even if the baby's not crying, you try to feed him so he can get used to that feeding. And I'm the big reader in the house. So me, when my sister recommended the book, I told my wife, "Hey, I think we should read this," you know, because it's a book that promises that by from week 7 to 10, the baby will be sleeping at night. So in the hospital, and then up to week 3, we were feeding the baby every 3 hours. So that included, 12 a.m., 3 a.m., 6 a.m. By week 3, we now just feed him at 11 a.m., 3 a.m., and then 6 a.m.
Hmm,
And the baby, I would say 95% of the time, is following that schedule.
nice.
So before I have a W 2, and before I went to work,
Wonderful.
me and my wife, we were taking turns. Some days it was me at the 3 a.m. and then it was her at the 6 a.m. So, the marriage was a tag team effort.
Yeah,
And obviously, I'm the big reader in the house, and I told my wife, "Hey, I think we got to do this. We got to," and, I motivated her, and I kind of like read out loud the parts, excuse me, the parts that I really like about the book that I wanted her to read with her. So it's been a fun journey. Honestly, because we plan every bit of it, has not been as difficult.
yeah.
And a lot of naysayers out there, I think being a father and being a mother is the best thing that could really happen to you. I really believe that.
Well, I love that. Yeah, I agree. I'm kind of curious because, like I mentioned in the beginning, it's like I found you via like the real estate investment, podcast,
Hmm.
and like I guess being an investor, I'm probably very numbers oriented, liking structure, like did the book resonate with you because you're like, okay, great, like we can break this down into 3 hour increments, and I can project this, and I know it, I'm going to forecast out 10 weeks, and we should be at this. That kind of like resonate with you too, just kind of knowing like, hey,
It's funny because I'm actually also an engineer. So
oh, okay, well,
I've always been the type to, forecast, plan everything. So yeah, definitely the way I am definitely plays a big role into the baby wise plan that we're following. Every I'll say, when me and my wife, when we got married, ever since then, our whole future has been planned from the beginning. We told ourselves, when we got married, we got an advice from a good friend of mine, and he told me, enjoy being a husband and wife before you have kids, because after you have kids, you become husband and wife and parents.
hmm,
So we told ourselves, let's travel everywhere we want to go. Let's do a lot of things for the first 2 years. After 2 years, my wife was going to end up graduating college, and that's what we'll end up planning the kids. And that's exactly how it happened. We got married in 2020. In 2022, we started trying to grow our family. And literally, it happened in a heartbeat. She was pregnant within like a month.
nice.
so, so yeah, ever since then, everything has been planned. I mean, God has truly blessed us with everything that we have.
Yeah, that's super cool. Because when I hear like making plans, and
Hmm.
every time we've made plans, our plans have not gone how we wanted them, and so I'm always curious, like as y'all are navigating the plans that you've set, kind of like what did that look like, um, from just like a prayer standpoint, and how like navigating um, our plans versus it would maybe plans that God had in store. Like how did y'all kind
Hmm.
of work through that season?
Yeah. So, man, that's a really good question. From the beginning, and one thing we always struggle with, my wife and I, is a lot of times we do all this planning, and sometimes we forget to put it in God's hands. Um, and we've been getting way better at that. And now what we do, my wife and I do what I call our yearly retreat.
Hmm.
And basically, we take a weekend, and we usually go to it's normally the woods. Like we go to an Airbnb cabin or something like that. And in
I
that,
know a couple cabins that are,
yeah, I know a guy that has a lot.
shout out to Saya.
Yeah, but yeah, we usually go to a cabin for the weekend, and what we do during that weekend is we plan for the next year. It's usually in December when we go, and we plan for the next year, and we break it down into uh, family to dos, family goals, and then improvements from one another that we would like.
Hmm.
And we
Said
pray a
from
lot
one
during.
another. It's
Yeah,
like,
so basically,
oh wow.
exactly. Basically, I asked her things that she did great last year and things that I would like for her to do this year, or things like that, and vice versa. She tells me, "Hey, you did this great this year, and I would like for you to improve this, whatever that is." Because in a marriage, obviously, nobody's perfect, and there's always space for improvement. There's been times where the same thing comes up in the list for me, where I
Hmm.
still have to improve something. Um, and so to answer your question, we set those plans, and not always things go to plan, but at the same time, I truly believe that, especially when you put it up for prayer, when you ask for the Holy Spirit to be present, in that weekend that I'm telling you about, I feel like God is there present, looking at the plans that we're discussing.
Hmm.
And, there's times that we don't agree on something at the beginning of the weekend, and by the end of the weekend, oh, and technology does not play a part in this weekend. We have specific times when we go out. That's the only times when we can have our phones. But we try to disconnect from the world.
That's cool.
But in the beginning, we pray and we ask God, make yourself present in this room, in this cabin that we're in. And we truly believe that He is helping us, mature and mold our marriage
Yeah.
together.
No, I absolutely love that. I think, just starting with him at the center of the, the whole weekend and everything probably sets the tone for that. I think that's really cool. I think one thing I'm just kind of thinking through how your approach um, to parenting. I think the sleep thing has really resonated with me because I think what's kind of neat is like when you go into a circumstance with your expectations aligned, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you went in being like, I sure hope I sleep how I always used to. Oh man, I'm so frustrated. I'm not. But you're going into a circumstance being like, hey, it's going to be different for a season, and I expect that, so it aligns with reality, right? And I think a lot of that is similar with our faith, right? Like if we go into being, men of God, thinking like, oh, I'm a Christian and everything's smooth sailing from here. This is going to be great. Like, and then when you hit choppy waters, right? Then you're like, wait, what's going on?
Yeah,
But going in knowing, like, consider it pure joy when you face trials and tribulations, not if. Um, it's a little bit, I don't say easier, but navigating it is more doable, right? So
yeah,
I think that just going back to you going into things, just being like, hey, like I know this season's going to be different, and navigating it. I mean, I may be putting words in your mouth, but navigating it's probably easier when you actually like level set yourself before. You're like, oh, I wish I was doing 8 hours a night. Like, come on, kid. Versus being like, no, like we went in with a plan. 3 hours is what I'm going to get, and I'm good with that.
yeah, and and being I know I haven't talked much about fatherhood, but being a father when things get rough, so a situation comes up with your family. Um, Number one, we usually forget to ask for God's guidance there. Like if something happens, a lot of times our first thought is not to, what, let me pray while this situation,
Mm.
a lot of times is that's not the first thing in our mind. And really that's something that I'm working on, to whenever there's a difficult situation going on, to always remember to pray. And um same thing with my son. I know when he cries, and this is the toughest part of parenthood, in my opinion. When the baby is crying, you change the diaper, you try to feed him, you check that he's not cold, if he doesn't have a fever, something, and no, the baby's still crying. Oh man, me and my wife just look at each other like,
Like,
what are we
yeah, I've checked everything off. What is going on?
what is going, and me being the dad, the father figure of my in my family, it's like my wife is always looking up to me as to figure out a solution. And she has every right. I really do think um both parents play a huge role in the family, but I do think the man is supposed to guide the family. I mean, you see it in today's society how if the father is religious in the family, then most likely the whole family will end up being in this case Christian.
Sure.
But a lot of times, I can't remember the stat where I read it, but like if the mom is a religious one, there's most likely that the kids will not be religious or involved in church. So I remember when my wife looks at me, hey, what do we do? I first thing I do is try to go back to the book to see, or text somebody, hey, have you gone through something like this, or what do I do? But yeah, man, this is definitely it's still a learning curve. There's a lot of things that we're learning, and I mean, and just right before the podcast, I mean, we were playing with the baby. The baby's starting to have a personality. He's laughing. He's smiling, and I just asked myself, what are you thinking?
Yeah.
What's your thought? I mean, it's that fatherhood is something like I didn't expect that. I didn't expect it to be as great. I didn't expect to like when you see a human in the eyes and it's the person that God entrusted you with. It's your son or daughter for whoever has a
Hmm.
daughter, but it's like there's no words that can describe that feeling. It's like I am supposed to make you like literally a servant of God. That's the way I see it when I see my son, and it's like I always tell myself, and this is one of my affirmations. It's like I am the best dad in the world, and I don't obviously I'm not trying to brag or anything. It's just
Yeah,
in order to be the best dad in the world, I have to wake up at 3 a.m. and not be bothered by it. In order to be the best dad in the world, I have to take care of the baby for the next 6 hours so my wife could go get her nails done or go hang out with a friend. Um, that's what I tell myself every time. Every time I got to do something with my son.
that's
Um,
awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's all mindset, right? Going into it with the believing you're the best dad, and so that's how you show up for them. So, like, I guess one thing I experienced, I guess, like pre fatherhood, and then is like the weight of like my faith changed,
mm,
right? When it was just, and then you just kind of alluded to it too, like when it was just me trying, like I'm trying to be a better person each day, trying to live more like Christ. And then like when you get married, then it gets weightier, right? I know I have, this a wife to get, and then when you bring a kid into the mix, it's like I have
mm.
to shepherd this child, and like the weight just like shifts. It's like, but yeah, did you feel like a similar like shift, like whether in the hospital or whenever it was?
Yeah, yeah. So when I mean being single, and then being husband and wife is always something like being a leader with my wife or being with my wife to church is easy because we can both do things quick. We can be like, okay, yeah, let's do that, or yeah, let's do this. But obviously, when you have a baby, I feel like from here on out, when we make a decision, you can't force them to do anything. The only thing you can do is show them how good the feeling of serving God or how good church is for him. Um, that's really your part. Your part, I feel like my part as a parent is to show him the way and show him um, the great things that could come if he follows Jesus. And I mean, I, I always think to myself, like, am I going to be doing the right thing for my son? Am I going to like what happens if he doesn't want to go to church? What happens if he tells me, "Hey, I don't want to be a Christian person. I don't know who this God person is." And Matt, I mean, I know you can agree what we see out in the world in public schools, what we see out there, it goes a lot against of what our beliefs are.
Yeah, 100%, man.
And one of the things that me and my wife tell each other, I think we're gonna homeschool our baby when the time comes, because
I
we're
love that.
just what we're seeing. It's like we can teach him something here at the house, but somebody else might teach him something else out there. And it's just like one of those, parents are the best teachers for kids. And my wife, she's a teacher already. She teaches kindergarten. Well, first grade now. She was teaching kindergarten. So I'm praying strong, and I asked her for anybody
Yeah.
that's listening for my wife to feel the call to homeschool our kids, because I feel like we're gonna be the best parents and having our children, and I speak in plural because we plan on having more,
Yeah.
our future children, to be at home where we can teach them and we can show them uh, the best way to be a person.
No, yeah, and I'm in the process of reading through a book called The Intentional Father right now, and it basically
Mm,
says um, your children will be shepherded by someone. You decide who, right? Are you going to shepherd your children, or are you going to let the world, And if you're going to let the world shepherd them, then
mm-hmm,
whatever happens, you know, is a byproduct of you not being intentional and engaged. And so, yeah, I fully agree. When I look at kind of what the cultural landscape looks like, I don't think it's on a positive course at the moment. And so, yeah, I think the more that we just take a proactive role in how we engage in our kids, like obviously you can't protect them from everything, but
mm-hmm.
like my thought is like you can shield them from
Right.
things to the point in which they're ready to process it. And I think that that's what I see now is like it's target a lot of it's targeted earlier and earlier and earlier when kids aren't in
Right.
a place to like maturely process things. And I'm like, no, that's when as parents, I think that's where we step in and say, nope, not today.
Yep. And it's really not to what they teach out there. It's just not. I mean, the way I see it is, you teach them what's right and wrong. I think we're the best people to teach our kids what's right and what's wrong. And you don't
Mm-hmm.
want somebody else to tell your kid that something is right when it's really not.
Yep.
So that's where we have to step in. Something that I see with a lot of parents, and I'm praying that I I'm not I don't end up being like that. I want to be involved in every activity with my kids. Meaning, when I get home from work or get home from somewhere, I want to be present. I want to be asking them about their day. What did they learn? I want to be a person that's there helping them with their homework. I know a lot of us fathers, we tend to just leave that to the mom because she's the one that is better caring than we are, and that's true. Mothers are better caring than we are, but we dads, we have a huge role to play. And like I said, the father figure is the leader, is viewed as the leader of the family. So wherever you lead
Mm-hmm.
your family, regardless of how strong mom is, that's where your family's going to go.
Yep. Yeah, I love that. But my pastor always says like whatever. I think make sure I don't butcher this completely, but he says like whatever you make optional, like your kids will make.
Mm,
They'll either make it obsolete or they'll do it excessively. It's one of the two. But an example. So if you make things like church an optional thing, they'll be like fully like, okay, well, I don't have to go. Right? It's optional
hmm
to dad. Don't have to do it. Whether it's engaging with being present with your kid, like oh, dad thinks that like dinner with family is an optional thing. Like okay, so do I. I'm gonna go eat in my room. Dad chooses to skip my soccer games. I'm going to skip family outing. Whatever it may be,
hmm
right? Whatever we make optional to us, they're going to be like, okay, well, that's the norm. So that's how I'm going to process it from here on out. So, yeah, I think
Yeah, that's
being
so.
taking that purposeful approach, I think is super powerful.
Yeah, that's so good for you to say. I've never really pictured it that way, but it's so true. I mean, whatever we do is going to echo to our kids for sure. And
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many things that I learned over the years. I mean, my dad was always present when it came to us, and I remember every time my dad came from work, and my dad used to work. work super late. Every time he came from work, he always used to be happy and excited to see us, and you can tell he was tired. He was my dad's. He used to work. He was a maintenance. He used to work maintenance manager at a company, so he used to come greasy, dirty from work. So you can tell when he was having a bad day. But he was
Mm.
always the person that was always excited and happy to see us, even though you can tell he had a difficult day. And just like that, if you're not the type of I feel like if I'm not the type of parent to be excited when I see my kids, I feel like my kids, if I get home from work, they're just going to be the type to stay in their rooms, and I'll see them later when I see them.
Yeah,
um
they'll text you from upstairs. Hi, Dad. Yeah.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
No, but I absolutely love that. But
how
so I
how,
guess
how I was gonna say, how about you, man? How and this is the podcaster coming out of me asking questions, of course.
yeah,
But
go for it, man.
how, what are things that you are working on this year to improve as a father and improve with your family?
No, I think that's really good. I think for me, and it's actually been something that I've tried to work on for years. You kind of saying earlier in like your marriage week, your annual trips. Like sometimes the same thing comes up, right? And I think for me, I feel like it's always a similar thing. Mine is being a little bit slower, to, I guess, to being angry or frustrated, and being giving my kids more grace than I do. I think that that's something that I can work on, and being a little bit um, gentler at times. I've been really thinking off. So in my last episode with David Huezo, we talked about like a number scale, right? And we were talking about, I was made a comment to him like, hey, like you're always staying at like a 2 or a 3, like in his demeanor with his kids. Like I always see him like when he's interacting, like he can be, he can let them know when they need to right the ship, but and he's like, well, because you got to be purposeful with that 1 to 10 scale when you're speaking to your children, right?
Hmm.
And not to take it to 7, 8, 9, 10, because those are allotted for dad needing to convey serious, like intense seriousness in the circumstance. And I have a tendency to go to 7, 8, 9, 10
Mm.
unnecessarily. And so I think that's the biggest thing that I'm working on at the moment is just like, does this warrant a 7? It should be a 3. Now, like, take it down a notch and navigate it a little bit more level-headedly. That's
Yeah.
probably the thing. And I mean, I think most people that know me would know that I'm fairly emotional. Like, my highs are high, my lows are low, and so um, that'd be it probably. I
Yeah.
appreciate you
I
asking the
know.
question. That's kind of
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, of course. I know one of the things that I'll confess it's in my list, that my wife asked of me is not to get angry so fast.
Mm.
And I mean, I'll confess I have that problem that when it's something that when I get to a point, I just get angry and I just don't want to talk. I don't want to. There's been times where I have left the house. I haven't left in about a year and a half. It's been I've been getting better, but um, that's one of the things that my wife wrote on my improvements for the year. And by the way, we printed these and we put them on our closet wall, which is a wall that we have to walk past every day.
Oh, so you're seeing them daily, right?
Yeah, yeah, we read it daily. Well, not
Awesome.
daily. We read it weekly. We
Mm.
every Monday we read it once a day, and yeah, and it's just a reminder, and it works. I will tell you, it works. You seeing something every day, or the moment when you fail, like let's say I got angry on a Wednesday. When a Monday comes and I read my goal, not to get angry, I'm like, oh man, dang it, I did bad. I didn't meet my goal for today. That literally resonates in your head. I think it's. Have you ever heard of
Yeah.
the book, The Power of Positive Thinking?
Mm-mm.
It's a really good book. It's by a
Power.
pastor. I'm trying to remember his name. It's like Vincent Peale, something like that. But it's a pastor that wrote it, and uh, I mean, the book has a lot of good gems, and one of those is the power of you repeating something to yourself. Repeating your affirmations and things like that. And that's one of the reasons why me and my wife decided to put these things on the wall, and literally mention, remind ourselves every week.
No, I absolutely love. I'll check that book out. I read a book a couple years ago called Anger by, I think it was by Gary Chapman. So the author of the Five Love Languages,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and so there's kind of two things that, so he talks about like anger is not in itself a sin. It's what you do. Like it says, like do the Bible says, do not sin from your anger, not never be
Mm,
angry, right? Like anger is an emotion, and how you respond to the emotion that can lead you, astray. But it's also like there was a thought exercise in it that was like stopping to ask yourself the question: has this person morally wronged me?
mm.
And be like, so say you're sitting in traffic, someone cuts you off. Have I been morally wronged by this individual that cut me off? I have not. I do not need to be upset with it. But there's times when, like, if you've been morally wrong, like, there's a different kind of response that you may have. But I need to ask myself those questions more, like in probably day to day circumstances. And it's that, like, that short circuit sometimes you need, like, to when you start feeling it and you're just like, I'm gonna react, I'm
Yeah.
gonna respond, and like it's at least like like, hold on, pump the brakes, like, and then you can kind of like chill. So um, that's definitely, I feel like, a forever work in progress for me.
Yeah.
um,
So you said the first book was The Intentional Father and
yeah,
Anger.
the Intensive Father, it's by John Tyson, and it's specifically for raising boys,
Tyson.
um, which I think is really cool. One of my buddies is reading it and recommended it for me because the gist of it is that in, like, Western culture,
Hmm.
like, the idea of a rite of passage doesn't really exist, right? Like, you think in, like, some historical cultures or societies, and it's like there's like men have a rite of passage to, like, manhood. There's like a
Hmm.
moment in time. It's ceremonial. Some of them obviously have been more like, maybe like a little bit more barbaric than others, right? Like you're gonna go out in the wilderness. You're gonna, like, you need to bring something back. Yeah,
Hmm.
but like the tribes have, like, you stick your hand in the ant mitt and get your hand, like some of them are more intense, but we don't have anything, right? Like, we, like, what is it? You get your driver's license, you're 18 now, you can vote. Like, we don't have, like, and so the book's intention is like, how do you purposely raise men of God through, like, learning how to navigate the world in a godly way, and just being really, I mean, obviously the title says, like, really intentional. Like, there's
Hmm.
being involved, and then there's being intentional, and so it's kind of maybe when they get that 13 to 18 year range that you're
Hmm.
really, like, putting them through, like, a purposeful, like, almost rite of passage to manhood. So when at the end of it, it's like hey, like, you know on you go into the world equipped, right? I'm not sending you off to till the first time you encounter really impactful, meaningful things is when you're, on your own. And so
Hmm.
obviously I'm still ways away from kind of that, but it's like started kind of putting the thoughts in my mind, like, what are some of those things that my boys at some point need to encounter. Some of them
Hmm.
are, probably more trivial in nature, right? Like, hey, I got to make sure my kids can change tires, restring weed eaters, all those kind of things that, like, we take for granted. But, like, when the time comes, you got your dad on the phone, like, hey, dad, what up? But and then there's more kind of weighty stuff, like, as they're encountering kind of where the culture's going. Um, Being able to ask critical questions of, things that they're being told as truth, but I want them to be equipped to challenge
Hmm.
those kind of things with the source of truth, right? And everything be biblically based, and they're going to go, like, fact check all this nonsense that's being thrown at them by the truth. And so
Yeah.
um, so it's good. So it's definitely not a book like you just go cover to cover. Like, I got to a point that's kind of like a stopping point where it's a lot of introspection, a lot of, like, one of them is like, write a letter to your dad. I haven't done that yet, but it's like it's an active participation kind of book, so it's pretty
Mm,
good.
okay. Yeah, I'll be interested in reading that. I wrote it down for me to download it. But that would be interesting. I'm writing a letter to my dad. Wow. I'll have to think on that one. But well, now let me ask you this. And again, this is the podcast you're coming out of me just because
No, man,
again,
you're good, man.
just like you, I love interviewing people because I learn a lot. So, and I'm already learned some great stuff from you. So I know. Well, first of all, talk to me about the book that your wife just launched. I purchased a copy. I'm excited for it to come.
Yeah,
So
you should.
talk to me about
They should
that.
be in the mail. Should hopefully be there no later than tomorrow. We had a lot of people getting them already, but yeah. So my wife wrote a book. It's called Sunshine Child, and it's inspired by my oldest. And the intent is really to kind of encourage and teach children who their identity is. That it's their identity is in Christ, um, and to be excited in who they are because of whose they are. So it's really just trying to drive that home. So my father-in-law was amazing with Erica and her siblings about just really reinforcing, knowing who they are. Like he would always ask, I'm like, never forget who you are. Who are you? I'm Eric
Mm-hmm.
Green. I'm a child of God, with the royal blood of heaven flowing through my vein. Like those kind of things that like were just daily. So we know we doing what we saying with our kids. So I'm super proud of her, um, for taking it from idea to I'm sitting here looking at him on my shelf in front of me, just being like, oh, my wife, that's so cool. And so yeah, man. So that's just where our goal is, just like whether it's this podcast or the book, just taking things that we feel God's leading us to do and not hesitating, right? Like I'm in an overanalyzer by nature. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've been wanting to be a full time real estate investor for I think probably going on 8 years now. I've done one deal because I am an overanalyzer, and as soon as I don't, I'm an analysis proud. Like as soon as I'm there, like I convince myself there's another piece of information that I need. Like, oh, like I'm
Yeah.
ready to go, but what about taxes? I'm gonna learn about taxes. Okay, I'm ready to go. What about capital? Okay, let me go make sure I'm good. Like it was just like one thing after another. And so just but I remember sitting in church one day and like the idea of do a podcast, call it Faith Forge Fathers, go. And like 2 weeks later, actually like got this going. And same with the book. Like it was like I have the words. I know what I want to do. I want it to be a board book. I want it to be printed in America. Let's go find the person. Boom. And next thing we know, it's sitting here on the shelves. And so it's just trying to act in obedience, man. It's like
Mm-hmm.
there's some things that I'm really slow to do, and then there's things like this that I'm like, it can be uncomfortable. Like I know I'm no theologian. I'm not gonna be, an NT Wright over here for anybody, but I want to just try to be as obedient as possible through this process.
Yeah, I know. While you were talking, Josiah and I create a lot of content specifically for real estate, and I know with real estate content we can come up with those in a heartbeat. However, when we're coming up with when I try to come up with a religious content, sometimes it takes me a long time because I want it to be perfect in a sense. Like I want to make sure I'm saying the right thing. I want to make sure it's something
Mhm.
that gets to somebody. And yeah, for some reason, I don't know, for some reason it always takes me longer to make a religious content or something that'll get somebody closer to God. Um
Mhm.
but it's just like that. It's yeah, that's just something I wanted to share. It just takes me forever to come up with religious content versus real estate. But yeah, man, and I was gonna
Yeah, I've
mention
had
too.
numerous instances that I've like sat on the back porch and like filmed something over and over again and like just never posted it because I was like, oh, that wasn't any good. What if someone calls you out because like you missed like the slightest bit of context in
Yeah,
something? And so, like I have a lot of trepidation sometimes because I'm like, like make sure you get it right because you know if there is a weight that I feel like comes with having a podcast that's based on faith. It's just like wanting it to be is rooted in truth as possible and not like I would rather the podcast stay super duper tiny but rock solid in its theology and then be big and me be loosey goosey with anything. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm really purposeful about like what I say and what's posted and how. And so a lot of times it can cast a lot of doubt. Just like, oh, like, did you say that right? Did you, like,
Yeah,
someone
and
might
I
call
will
you on
add,
that.
this ministry that you're doing, being small, obviously this is a religious podcast, so it's not going to be the number one podcast in the world, obviously, but something I always tell myself. So I work with youth ministry in my church, and sometimes we tell our when we don't have a big attendance, we always tell ourselves, I mean, what's going on here, what's happening, and the groups among ourselves, we remind ourselves, we're doing all of this. If out of, let's say, uh, if only one kid follows God out of this, youth group that we're
Mhm.
planning, it was all worth it. We can plan
Yep.
for 50 people, but if only one shows up, maybe that one person is one that gets saved, then it's all worth it. So to your point, Matt, what I say is like, you know, you doing this, you may think that you don't have a big audience, or that's not what you're looking for, I'm sure, but somebody may hear this and it may be the exact perfect thing that they needed to hear. And if that person gets saved, or something changes in them, then everything that you're doing, dude, is worth it. Um, so yeah, I
Yeah,
just wanted to
I
share
couldn't
that.
agree more. Yeah, and like my pastor always said, like, when just one person gives their life to Christ, all of heaven, celebrates, right? So it just
Yep.
takes one
Yep.
one person, and so yeah, that's that's exactly it. I'd rather have a tight knit group of dads here, all walking through life together, and I mean that's the ultimate goal. It's like, you know, I mean, hoping to slowly build this community. So like, if you have that, earlier you said like, oh, I got a question, I want to text somebody. Like, oh, hopefully, one day we have a Faith Forge Fathers community. You're just like, I'm gonna go hit the community up and see how people navigated
Yeah.
this, and go from there.
Yeah. That'd be awesome, man. That's great. And I was gonna say, I was gonna add one last thing. You mentioned real estate investing. One of the reasons why I truly believe in real estate is because it can give me a lot of my time back and not be tied to a W two. Um, and me, I'm a big, like I mentioned in the beginning of the interview, I'm a big person to believe that we are the hands of Jesus on earth. And something that I do, when I first got started in real estate, I told myself I got to do something that will change the world, that will impact the world in some way. And since I was already in real estate, I was buying houses, I was rehabbing them. I told myself, you know what? I'm going to build houses for those in need. I don't know how the
Mm.
heck I'm going to get involved in that, but I'm going to do something like that. So um, I I spoke to my spiritual guide, which is a priest here in Alabama, and he pointed me and he introduced me to a couple that did some work in Belize. And last year we did our first mission trip, or I did my first mission trip to Belize, and we built actually a roof for a lady that it just happened just in time. Right before we built her roof, a hurricane came.
Oh wow.
Literally, while I was down there, like I lived through a hurricane down there. And who
Oh, it hit
knows,
while you were
maybe,
there.
yeah, while we were there,
Oh
we
man.
were without power for like 2 days over there. A whole bunch of trees falling into the roads, a lot of some houses damaged and stuff like that. But who knows? I mean, I don't honestly. I see that as, if that roof would have been completed before that hurricane, I feel like that roof would have flown off. And we were supposed to finish it in a matter of 5 days, but because we knew the hurricane was coming, it was already in the Gulf of Mexico. We were like, okay, we got to work overtime and try to get this roof, because we already had the old one off, so we needed to get
Oh
something.
man.
So anyway, and I was trying to say, with real estate, I'm wanting more time to do the will of God, to spend more time with my kids whenever, wherever, and really that's my ultimate goal, to be purposeful about everything that I do with my family, with my children, in the church, and doing God's work.
No, I think it's just like a perfect way to summarize. Like, I feel like your approach to so much. I think you go at things with purpose, which I think is going to set your family up to be really, just I think thriving. I think it's going to set your boys up, or boy now, whatever it may be in the
Oh
future.
man, Matt, you're already telling me I'm having another boy next.
Welcome to the boy dad club, man. But no, I just think it's really awesome. Your
Appreciate
approach
it, man.
to parenting for life, man. It's been such a refreshing, just kind of thing to hear tonight. I really appreciate it. I appreciate your time. Thanks for being on. I know schedules can be delicate, like we were talking about, and I appreciate you carving some time out. Appreciate your wife letting you jump on tonight. Make sure I extend a thank you from me to her,
Will do,
and
will do.
just thanks for being a part of the podcast, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, brother. Thank you for having me.
Cool, man. If you enjoyed this episode of the Faith Forged Fathers podcast, please leave us a 5-star review on whichever podcast platform you're listening from. Subscribe to the podcast, and also head on over to Instagram and follow at Faith Forged Fathers. Thanks again for listening.